Hello and welcome to the shed. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the router plane. Hope you enjoy. So why the router plane? Well, other than, say, the basic hand plane, the router plane is pretty much the most versatile tool that you could have in your workshop. And it can be used for a variety of different tasks, mainly related to your joinery. What we're going to do today is I'm going to talk through the different parts of the router plane, and then I'm going to show it in action, and I've got some mimicked joints here so we can see how we actually use the router plane. Let's jump down here and we'll start going through what the router plane is and its various parts. So at a quick glance, this is a record number 71 router plane. It has this distinct sort of opening here, which not all of them have, and it has a little rest foot up here, which we'll talk about in a minute, which helps to support this gap if you need it. So first of all, let's undo this little thumb screw here, take that out completely, and you can see that we have this little rest here, and it has this foot that you can move up and down if you want to use the wide foot for the support, or you can just use the rod, and when it pushes through like this, you can have just this thin part of the rod here just as a little bit of support and ahead of the blade if you need it. Most of the time I just have the thumb screw done up and lifted out of the way, and I don't really use that. So we obviously have the sole here, and you'll see these two rails that run right through here. That is so you can put a stop. Now, since this is a vintage one, I don't actually have that little stop, but I don't think it's that necessary. I don't think many people actually use it, and that's why I've got one here that doesn't have it. But you could have a little sliding fence if you were doing this on a thin rail to keep you square. And that's what these holes here are for, to secure the fence on either side. But as I said, I don't have it. Next, we'll turn it around. We've got this locking collar here. Now that's for locking the blade down once you've got it fully adjusted. So every time you make an adjustment, you've got to loosen this collar, make your adjustment on this little wheel here, which we'll get to in a sec, and then you lock the whole thing down using this little collar. Next, what we'll look at is this little wheel just here. Now that's your depth adjustment wheel, so you scroll it up or down and you raise and lower this blade. Now I thought we'd take that blade off so you can have a close look at it. So you can see it's a little L-shaped blade. Now this is not 90 degrees to this back spine. It's actually on a slight angle, so you get clearance for this cutting edge to hit the timber before anything else, and this never makes contact. So we have a probably 25 degree bevel here, and then this is kind of giving a bit of a back bevel to it because of it, but it gives clearance right to the cutting edge here. This one is a 12mm blade here, so you're going to need to be doing something that's at least 12mm to get this to fit. There are different blades that you can buy. You have little diamond blades that obviously come to a diamond point, and you can get narrow ones of these. Now if you do have a vintage one and you can't source the other blades, as I understand when I was doing my research, that the new ones for the Veritas router plane actually fit these vintage styles. So that's something you might want to check out and maybe ask at your local woodworking store, but I have heard that the Veritas ones do fit this, which is good if you've picked up a vintage one and you don't have a blade or you want some narrower blades. As you can see is the basic operation. And one more thing with this locking collar, we have this screw, if I take it out, so it's got a little taper on it, and that fits down into this little triangular or diamond ridge just here. That's how you actually lock the collar down. Now it's important to make sure you do lock that collar down and release it when you're doing it, because otherwise the blade could move. So before we go ahead and set this up and use it, I just wanted to show you how you actually do put the blade in and out of this. So you've got to come in from the bottom, make sure your collar's loose enough. You lift the collar up like this, slide the blade up under that collar, twist it slightly, and lock it onto this little ring here, which is your adjuster, and then lock this collar down so it doesn't slide out when you're adjusting, and now it's ready for use. Now when it comes to router planes, there are a bunch of different types out there. These metal ones are all fairly standard, whether it's a Record or a Stanley. There's not too much difference between these vintage style router planes. Now I know that there is one premium modern maker that makes metal bodied router planes, and that's obviously Veritas. I've not used one, but I'd be curious to see how well that works, and since it's a premium maker, I'm sure it works really well. There are a lot of wooden bodied router blades out there, and from various different people that have come up with kits for them, and they mainly have a straight blade that comes down and makes it doesn't have that L shape that this one down here has. So now what I thought we'd do is we'll jump down here and we'll talk through the operation of this. I've got a dado marked here ready for use with the router plane. I've got half of a tenon here that we're going to work on, and then I've got this board here that's got a rebate, and I'll show you how we can use the router plane for squaring out those different joints and getting them dead flat referenced with the rest of the timber. And that's really the advantage of using a router plane. You can get your chisel and get it down to a spot where you've only got a little bit left, and then you can use the router plane to do the rest of the work to square it off for you and make sure that it's coplanar or parallel with the rest of the work, and to know that it's dead flat. And that's the advantage of having a plane sole, which in any case of any plane, the sole is your reference against your timber, and it gets everything nice and flat because of that. In every case, when you're doing this sort of thing, you want to hold your workpiece down. I've used my hold fast, which you can see just the edge of it here and the other one here. Now you want to be able to have enough space for your router plane to reference flat like this. Now the way in which we get our first cuts with this is we undo the locking collar, and we want to drop this blade down. So we want to bring this down to the highest point, and then lock the collar back down. Now when we're locking and unlocking this collar here, it's just like a quarter of a turn, it's not much. And then the idea is that when we've got a rebate like this, we just push right through, and then we go, oh, we need to go down a little bit lower, so we go about another half a turn, reference through, half a turn again. So you can slowly work it down until eventually you get the depth that you're looking for. And we can see that that's fairly smooth. And normally, obviously, the back of a dado like this doesn't really need to be smooth. But you can see from referencing like that, you can get it nice, square and smooth, and you're just taking off a little bit of a time to get that last little fit and make sure that it's perfect, coplanar, aligned flat for the bottom with the top or your reference face. So now I thought we'd move into how we can use a router plane like this to help with our tenons. So this time we obviously want to get it down to our depth, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that down to my tenon face just here. I've just run into a little issue, which you do run into these, and you can see this little screw here, how it's got this little piece here. So you can actually turn this over so you can screw it off, and this will allow you to get a deeper movement with your blade on your router plane. So if you're doing a lot of shallow stuff, that way's easier, but you can turn it over and put it in this way and allow you to get that little bit deeper with your blade. So I need to do that for this tenon. Now I could easily leave it that way. There's no real advantage of not leaving it that way, but you can use it both ways over. So once again, put the blade back in. So now I need to just adjust this till I'm just touching it. Okay. So I'm just touching the surface here of this now. And with this, you're referencing this side down. So you're pinning this side and you're rotating it. And you run like this. Run right across the shoulder. And then turn it around. Come come in from this side so you don't punch out these edges. So you come in from both sides. And so you're using the reference once again. And if your blade's sharp enough, you'll get a relatively smooth surface. But since it's a tenon, a rough surface on your tenon doesn't really matter. But you get the idea that this is the movement, and it's this rocking process here and coming in from both sides. So that's why it's important that this is obviously flat, and you just do this referencing like this from both sides. And obviously you can adjust this down a little bit more if you need to take a little bit more off. And once again, as you can see, that's going to get that tenon nice and square to your reference face. So now we've got these two down, I thought we'd tackle the rebate here, because you can obviously use a router for that similar process. So we want to hold this down and we want to reference up on this edge again, so you're pinning this side up here. And you obviously don't want to take too much off. If you're taking too heavy a cut like I am, you can just turn it a slight turn just so you take a lesser cut. And you obviously once again want to come in from both sides, and you can use that sort of rotating technique like you can with a tenon. And slowly work it down. Like so. Lock it down. So you can see if you take too big a tack like that, it's just going to flake. That's when you let it off a little bit. And in hardwoods like I've got here, which is carry, you actually want to take a thinner cut because this blade's not going to be able to keep up. So say you've watched my video where I've done the rebate with the chisel. Instead of smoothing the bottom with the chisel, you can use the router plane to do that process for you, and it's going to be easier to get that square and flat. So you're going to end up with more accurate and more repeatability within your rebates. There you have it, folks. That's the router plane. And as you can see, it is a very versatile tool that can be used on a lot of your joinery. And if you do happen to have the narrower blade for the router plane, you can 100% use the router plane to do your grooves. Depending on how wide your groove is, a router plane can actually do the bottom of it for you. If you're using the chisel to start it out, you can then finish off the bottom of it with a router plane, which is going to make the improvement to your joinery and make sure that it is as square and as deep as you'd like, and it's all parallel. So I'll put it across to you guys. Leave some comments down below if you've got some more questions about the router plane and what it can be used for. I'll try and answer them, and obviously anyone else of you out there viewing that know a little bit more or would like to add some more information about the router plane, please let us know in the comments below. So if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing down below. It really does help the channel out more than you know. And if you'd like to support me a little bit further, please consider giving a super thanks to this video if you got some value out of it, or checking me out on Patreon. If you'd like to see some more videos such as this tool introduction video here, please check out the video up here where I introduce the hand plane. Bye for now.